No doubt.
Small wins.
No doubt. What's happened, everyone? Carmen Dinisco here, the Launch Network. Got an awesome show, Made in America. This is the greatest show. I mean, we got so much cool stuff going on. Just been chatting with our special guest for today, bringing on my co-host, Mr. Christopher Guerrera, fresh from the factory, and the Super Potty Trainer. What's up, Chris?
Hey, baby, still shipping. We're still shipping.
I see you're making friends with like the mail people over there.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. You think about how many units we're shipping out. These things are going. They're asking us to put them in bags, and then they're delivered. They're picking them up in the morning. There's so many that we're shipping out. We're actually bringing them to the post office.
Wow.
You know, so I think I learned a couple new things about the United States Post Service and what they do and ledgers and giving them the right barcode too. I
see the big bags. How many Super Pie Trainers go in one of those big mail bags?
Yeah, it depends. About 25. Depends if it's a double order, triple order, a single order, right? Depends on how much fits in the bag. But yeah, it's crazy. We've been packing them up. I've been renting SUVs, so we've been loading SUVs. At one point early on, we were making 4 trips, 3 cars, 4 trips a day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been good. But
That's
you know,
awesome.
we're caught up and we're leveled out, and now it's just constant orders still coming in, and we're looking at some different avenues and some different paths for it. But we had our Walmart open call yesterday.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about
Over
that. How'd it go?
12,000 businesses applied, and they picked 1,000. And yes, Pace was one of them.
It wasn't
So
even,
I
wasn't
submitted
even a
a product.
question.
We got the tick remover they're interested in, the tidy hook home they're interested in, the auto that's already completed, and the Super Potty Trainer working on the baby aisle and end cap. And of course, we have our manufacturing plant, all made in USA, officially approved by Walmart, which gives us a leg up on everybody.
That's no joke, that approval.
Yeah, it's a big deal. A lot of work, but it's a big deal.
Cool. I got a couple of Made in America products I'll have to send it up to you. Check out.
All right, cool. We got our guest today. Brian Pearson is a fellow that got a similar background to mine in the lean category, but he's into all kinds of stuff, coaching and strategies. And so let's bring him on. Hey, Brian, thanks for joining us today.
Hey guys, you're gonna have to hang on just one second. I'm having a handsome attack with you two boys on the screen. So yeah, man, thank you for having me on. It's man, what a treat. I've been looking so forward to this, and you know, you guys, I'm big fans. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm big fans.
Yeah, well, we're fans of yours as well. So thank you for that. But let's learn a little bit about Brian. Who is Brian? Let's go back. Let's go back. I mean, you can't be more than 35 years old, so we won't go too far back. Right?
Okay, well,
and learn.
Put your glasses back on. I just got my Medicare card this week, so it's you know, getting old as dirt. But hey, I'm actually up here in Greenville at my stepson's house, and I'm going to meet an old teammate of mine for lunch. You know, grew up in Greenville down on the West End, and Dad worked in the cotton mill for 40 years and saw all that turmoil going on, and you know, worked in the corporate world now 46 years, been coaching in that world for over 30 years. So a little bit of background in manufacturing, and I've seen it really well, and I've seen it really bad. And you know, what you guys are doing with Made in America is absolutely what we need to be doing in this country. So you know, a little bit about the background. You know, Chris, you and I talked about the lean background. So I was on the front end with the corporation I worked for back in 2000 when we decided to go down that journey, and everybody wanted their own production system, right? So one of my old bosses got to work with him up at Toyota, and Gary Combus and those guys. So we saw it, you know, coming in, if you think back, well, you guys are too young. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was all about world-class manufacturing. So, you know, lean is just one of those things that applies to a lot of everything. So now as I'm coming out and retiring full-time and going in and starting up my consulting firm, it's helping people understand how to go from the boardroom, like I say it this way, from the boardroom all the way to the ditch. Because it's about 3 things, right? People, processes, and profits. And, we get that backwards sometimes. People are extremely important in this country to get manufacturing back where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I live outside of Greenville. I have an apartment downtown, and my house is in Simpsonville. I spent quite a bit of time in the 90s in the BMW plant.
Yep.
And this place is
Oh,
just absolutely booming. I mean,
yeah.
housing industry, the parks downtown, the whole
Yeah.
west side of downtown now is absolutely high level, beautiful by the ballparks. They put $1 billion
Yep.
center in. So
Yeah.
Greenville is where it is happening. And the weather is always nice.
Well, you're absolutely right about that, Chris. I grew up on the West End before all that happened, and it was, a mill town, and that's all we ever knew. So I brought my wife up here for the first time, and all those trendy restaurants down on the West End. Now I saw a couple getting out of their car because I grew up right off of Perry Avenue down where Queen Street is. And back then, somebody was getting murdered about every Friday night. And I yelled at them. I said, "You got to get back in your car." And my wife said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Man, they're in trouble. They're not from the hood. So you got to get back in your car." And turn around, and boom, all the trendy restaurants are there. Felt like an idiot, but I got to make sure people are safe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because back in the day, Bagamo's, the restaurant, like about halfway downtown. That's about where we would go, and that's about it. The West Side was, like you said, you didn't hang out there. And that was the 90s.
Yeah, if you were from there, it's great, but if you're not,
yeah, now it's totally different. I mean, you got the ball field down there, all the high risers. They spent $1 billion by the Peace Center on all the buildings, and it's just beautiful. And they've got more apartments going up now on the other side of the Greenville Drive baseball team.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. They have a park going up, Unity, just down by the rabbit trail, by where the Reedy River goes. It's 60 acres. This thing is going to be unbelievable.
Yeah,
they ripped down every old building, flattened it, leveled it. They're putting a bridge over there now. I tell you, I've never seen anything like this for growth in an area.
Yeah,
it's just incredible. I love it down here.
Yeah, and that's what, Carmine and I were talking about that. I left in 1986 and went down to Lexington, down toward Columbia. And, just having to come back from meetings and so on and so forth, it's just phenomenal, the amount of growth. But it's spreading here in South Carolina. South Carolina is a great place to live, absolutely great. And, people are starting to catch on to that. But just the amount of growth, so I told you, 1975, I started with Michelin. And I remember we would take, if they put a call out, there would be 4,000 or 5,000 people lined up just putting in applications.
Wow.
And, to see where everything is now and the amount of growth, it's like you've seen different decades. It's almost like watching one of those National Geographic episodes, and in my mind, and from where we came from and where it is now, it's just phenomenal. And the amount of money coming into Greenville is ridiculous. Same in Columbia, same in Charleston, where my other stepson lives. We were down there, and man, they're popping down there too. So the state of South Carolina is where it's at. We get manufacturing back. Just stay out of my neighborhood because I got to be able to drive. Okay, I got to be able to get down.
That was a problem, Brian. That was a problem. It's kind of funny. That's the problem in the 90s. The Woodruff Road. There was, I mean, they had just started putting up, like Walmart went up, a movie theater went up. Now, I mean, it is just on a peak Saturday. You don't want to drive that road. You need to know the back.
No.
There's infrastructure. There's so many people moving down the infrastructure. Can't handle it. And one thing I notice is I can see where my tax dollars go. Like I'm up in New Hampshire, I'm paying the maximum on my housing for taxes because there's no income tax, there's no sales tax, but they get you on property tax. I keep saying, where's my money going? I live in this little town. I don't do anything in this town. Down here, you can at least see where it's going. It's pretty nice. I definitely got to say, absolutely love this area.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Chris, and don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to people coming in because it is a great place to be. Where I'm at, you're 2 hours to the mountains, 2 hours to the beach. You got the best of both worlds.
Wow.
But yeah, Carmine, it's a great place, and you just need to get out of Tampa and come on down here, and South Carolina's where it's at. But yeah, when I worked on the project at Michelin, when we became $1 billion site, Nikki Haley came out for the groundbreaking, and it's just phenomenal to see that amount of growth. But I think, Chris, you and I talked about this early on. When I was early into management in Michelin, Francois Michelin did my training, my new hire training as a manager. And one of the biggest things he said, your most valuable asset is your people. Mm. I believe that today, and we went through the journeyman program. So you start at the very bottom, you had opportunity to go all the way up to the top. And I've just been very fortunate to be with that company, and they are tremendous. Been able to travel the world, and a lot of my background has come because of that. But it all starts with relationships, right? And that's one thing that has held true for me, is the values in your company are important. And if you don't have good values and you don't treat your people well, you're not going to do well. So I'm very happy with where we're going in the future. And, I'm stepping down and got my coaching business going. And somebody asked me, what does an executive coach do? I said, I yell at people, I get paid for it. It's a pretty cool gig to have, right?
I want in on that.
Hey, Carmine, I tell you what, man, if you watch me, you would say, my gosh, why does anybody pay you $1? They're like in tears. They say, what do I need to do? Do the opposite of what you're doing, okay?
No, definitely. Brian, you said something that's key here, right? And we'll get into the coaching, because I think it's a big element of who you are. But even at like the BMWs, I'm still good friends with Knut Floor as the president. I visit him frequently. But one thing I did learn early in my career, if you want to be a good leader and a good manager, it starts with treating people properly.
Absolutely.
Anybody can have the greatest product in the world. If you don't have the right people doing it for you, it won't be the greatest product ever. Yeah. And as soon as you lose sight of that, the game is over. So I built my business initially on going to corporate America and fixing companies, improving the bottom lines. And it started with listening. It started with understanding what the people needed, what was required, walking in plants, doing value streams, and really getting the process where, it's easy to point to a person and say they're not doing a good job. I always say, for me, it starts with putting a good system in place that's got robust, right? And that works, and then training the individuals in the system, and then holding everybody accountable. You're always going to have the outliers, but then you find the good people will always want to do the right thing and push those people out. So, that leads me into where you are, right? So you had an opportunity to do all that in corporate America. So now you understand people, and you've got a coaching business. So talk about a little bit about what you do in your coaching business.
Chris, it's not any different than what I've been doing in the corporate world, because one thing I love about watching you and watching Pace, seeing you with your people, they have respect for you and you have respect for them. Mm-hmm. And no matter where I've been in the world, once you lean in and listen to people's problems and help them solve them, that's what the role of a leader is all about. You help your people solve their problems because they have tremendous ideas. And if you tap into that resource, you're going to get greater results than you ever have, because the straight up business side of things is this: from the time an order is placed until the money comes back in your pocket, you want that as short as possible, right? And that's what lean is all about. I had a chance when we started out early on, we hired some consulting firms, and I worked with a gentleman named Nero Haralaka, and it was with TBM out of Raleigh, Durham, and I became a Kaizen instructor. So it hit home when I went up to Toyota and trained with Matt Tajiri, who was, they have the mother-daughter plant relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So this was the factory Gary Convis was at, but I had an opportunity to work with Matt Tajiri, who was from the mother plant. And literally, when you stop on the shop floor and you see people improving processes, so you'd have maybe a business unit leader there, you would have an operator, you'd have a trainer, you'd have an industrial engineer. Everybody's working on this problem. And, during my travels in Michelin, I had an opportunity to go to a factory one time. They asked me to go up because one of the other things that I was able to do was risk assessment on major projects. So you mitigate the risk before you ever launch the project, right? So all of that from top to bottom has been in my bailiwick, but it was interesting. There was a guy, and I'm not going to name names, but they said, "Hey, Brian, we had this problem with this piece of machinery. Would you mind looking at it?" And I said, "Hey, I'd be glad to. Get the business unit leader out and let me talk to him." And he introduced himself, and the first words out of his mouth were, I'm a Six Sigma black belt." I said, "Well, ain't that?" And looked at this problem with your people. And the answer was no. That's what this is all about. You tap into your people, you have got a tremendous resource. You need to treat them like an asset and not a commodity. And that's what I'm transferring into my coaching business, because leadership, you can teach that piece, you can teach communications, but you can't teach connections with people until you learn how to follow and you learn how to listen. And then when you apply a lean methodology to that, when you look at problems, man, it just goes. It absolutely goes. And that's what excites me about doing this. It's no different than what I've been doing for a long time now.
Yeah, and I think, the people, I always say the people, I don't care, what background you have. I mean, I've got a master's, I got a Lean Six Sigma background. I've done it all over the world. But at the end of the day, the people that are doing it every day truly understand the process. You have skill sets that you can help and you can teach and you can tie it all together. But when you start thinking more than someone else who's been doing it for 20 years, you've set the wrong tone. And not to even have, like you just said, that guy didn't even come to the floor to see the problem. How can you solve the problem?
Yeah, so we worked on the going to the floor piece first, because as you know, Gemba is where the action happens. And literally until you've seen the problem with your people, you don't really know what resources you need to get it resolved. And you can apply this methodology to any major problems that you're having. That's one of the good things. People ask me, they say, "What do you do in this coaching?" Well, it's from the boardroom to the ditch and literally everything in between to help you get your people where they need to be, get your processes straight, and ultimately help you make a profit to stay in business for a long time. Because some people are working on some really, really tight margins and the cost of things going up. So it's the whole piece of just doing business that we don't have a good grasp on. And I think, honestly, that the way we're teaching business in the universities now, it's all theoretical. And literally, if we put them into the factories and got those minds in, that's one thing that excites me. And I have to tell you that everybody talks about the millennial generation. They are my best friends in the world because they're coachable. The ones that are not coachable, I don't work with. If you want to work with me, you got to have the same values that I have, and people is one of those values. And if you don't, I'm not going to work with you. Right. So, and clients don't understand this. I tell them, look, I can fire you. You can fire me, but I can fire you too. And you're going to owe me the full ticket, because if you're not willing to do what's clear based on the facts, so facts is another value that you have to have. And Chris, this in your background, it's this methodology of DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And that's how you get it going. And your inputs are, your outputs function of your inputs. So you have to look at the whole system from top to bottom, but don't discount people in the middle, because that's where the innovation is. So I say it this way: I work in three arenas. I work in performance, I work in progress, and I work in innovation. And Carmine, for you, I know working with the SC inventors, man, guys like Chris, you're pumping out products that people need and people want. And the people that have the great ideas, the next iteration that's going to get us to be a manufacturing powerhouse again, we got to tap into those people instead of saying that we can't work with them. And that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, I always say, like, when people talk about, I can get it cheaper in China, and I say, okay, walk me through your process, because everyone thinks it's a piece price that you're talking about. They left off the packaging, they left off the shipping, they left off the cash flow, they left off paying it up front. And then when I'm done with them, they go, okay, so what did you say now? Oh, it's a lot more expensive. And you have to wait 4 months. I mean, I couldn't even have imagined being on Shark Tank with what happened to us and having my product come from somewhere else, because we would have fallen on our face unless we had thousands of units to handle it.
Yep.
It would have blown up.
Absolutely. And, you know, having traveled in China a little bit, I was offered a job over there and it just didn't pan out, but I spent a little bit of time over there. What I've learned, no matter what country I've been in, people are people. They want to feel valued, they want to feel cared about, and they want to feel like they've been listened to. And the people that they gravitate to are the ones that are willing to listen and tap into their expertise to seek out the best in them. And the Chinese were no different. The thing I saw when I was there, there's this culture of copying. You know, that's how they're trained in the schools. Mm-hmm. Copy, copy, copy. And we better get off our butts and start waking up in this country and realizing that we're going to put ourselves at risk. And, you know, it just drives me crazy the way we do it. I love what you're doing, Chris, because manufacturing in America was one of the strongest places in the world. If it was made in the USA, it meant something. And I want to see us get back to that. I really and truly do.
Yeah, you know, and then you've got some people that say they're making it in the U.S. when they're really assembling it in the U.S. Very different. There's laws against that, but I can tell you, we are making everything we do is 100% in the U.S. And I've used the same business model BMW. I have my plant in a central location in New Hampshire, and any suppliers are nearby. So it's not weeks to get my product. If you know, I can get it pretty quick. I mean, we got product into Walmart on a 2-week notice, and we didn't even have a label. We didn't even have graphics. We had no box. We had no resin.
Right.
So to try to do that, you know, and if you're buying from overseas, or even if your suppliers are, you know, in the West Coast, you got no chance of meeting those deadlines. And not for nothing, in that case, that got us enough sales to get on Shark Tank.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Right.
It all played hand in hand. So I feel good about that. And it's a lot easier doing business here. And I think, you know, we value stream the whole process. Build to order. We can put a tool in pretty quick. We can mold pretty quick, and we can ship them. I mean, literally, I was shipping product from the press coming to the shipping station and out the door during our Shark Tank airing.
Right. And the problem that we have, you know, you take some things that we make in America that are being treated like commodities, and it just opens you up for poor quality wherever you go. And if you have a product that's placed on the high end of the market and you're trying to compete against something that's got similar quality and similar price, you know, we're all our own worst enemies sometimes, because we're not willing to pay the money that we need to pay for the products that are made here. And it's, you know, we're killing ourselves by doing that. But the way you're set up, Chris, I mean, this is exactly what I do, what you do. And this is what every successful company has done. You know, it's all about getting it closer. And like I said, from the time the order's placed until the time the money comes back in your pocket, you want it as short as possible. And that's how you generate the engine of business to keep it going. But it's all hinged on foundation of people. And that's the other piece that I really want to try to help companies with is helping them value their people, because they are such great resources and there's so much inside of them, and we don't tap into it. We treat them like a necessary evil sometimes.
Yeah. So Brian, walk me through what your day looks like typically when you're coaching someone. Are you coaching executives and companies, or are you coaching individuals, or are you doing all of it? So just give me kind of a walk.
My focus, Chris, is primarily executives and C-suite guys, but I have the ability to go, like I said, all the way down to the shop floor to the ditch, because not everyone has that kind of background. It's a little hard to explain to folks because you have to be able to see the whole picture. So what I try to do, and you know this, where the gaps in communication come are between the highest level and the mid level. And I've heard executives tell me, you know, people just don't talk to me anymore. They don't listen to what I say. And I'm like, well, there's a reason behind this. And, you know, you can't work in a vacuum. You can't assume everything's on automatic, but it starts with relationships. I mean, I've had people, had a guy, $50 million company. We planned out for 10-year plan and just how many people you were going to need to get. And we were going to take them from 50 million to like 200 million in like 5 years. And it's doable. So those are huge numbers. Those are growth numbers. And you have to be prepared for the growth. You have to be able to think about that. So in the course of my day, basically I have 3 offerings. So what happens with executives sometimes is they get out of balance. So I help provide clarity and focus to get a plan together, because if your work life is too much and your personal life is not enough, it creates an imbalance. But you build, like you said, Chris, the systems to help you achieve that. It's not something overnight, and people don't fully understand that. You have to be able to look at the whole picture. So that's how I coach them. I mean, 3 basic entry points. You know, you got a short program, mid program, and then the long-term inner circle where you come in for at least a year, but you're in with other people. And that's kind of where I'm hanging my hat right now. But where my love is and my passion is on the shop floor, working with people and helping them solve problems.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny, Brian. It's true. Like they all have to be connected. I try to make, when I go, especially when I go into corporate America, I try to make it really simple. I use 5S, I use 8D, and I use value stream as my main tools to really connect everyone. You can make it really technical when you get into Six Sigma, but then you lose people and you lose interest. So I start with the basics to show results. I mean, you can take, like, you know, I think Oneida Air Systems, for example, we took 3 floors, 50,000 square feet, and combined it into 1 floor at 25,000 square feet and double the output on sales. So the bottom line, the primary shareholder thought he hit the lottery, literally, because the cash dropping to the bottom line, inventory was under control. It wasn't mixed. The set things that were selling, they had 15-week lead times. They're saying, who's buying this stuff? They're waiting 15 weeks, right? We got it down to the biggest piece of equipment we had, which was the 30 horsepower. We got it down to 7 days, and 80% of our mix was either same day shipment or next day, depending on when we ordered it. And we were tearing it up, completely tearing it up. And you know, when you think about going from a 15-week lead time, what you have to hold for inventory as opposed to now turning it over 30 times a month, there's nobody that can compete with that.
Yeah, and where we get it wrong sometimes, Chris, is in the planning of the products and how we schedule those. You know, you brought up a great point. The Japanese call inventory sleeping money. And the less you have, the better off you are. So you go to one-piece flow, but everybody thinks things are going to go wrong, and you want this big buffer of stock in there. And for large companies, with big legacy systems, those are the really difficult ones to get them to change. But you know, even a greenfield operation, when you're talking about planning that thing out, you need to think about that value stream from time the product comes in to make the product you're selling, all the way till it gets to the customer and everything in between. And you need to make it as efficient and as effective as possible, because you're right, that lead time is critical. And if you look at your SKU velocity, depending on how many SKUs you have in your portfolio, it just becomes a nightmare if you have complicated processes. You've got to simplify, and sometimes simplification is one of the hardest things people have to do.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of, you know, some people have been doing it a long time. think of it as job security. And and I always view it the other way. The more people that know your job, the better it is. It's not job security. Now you can go on vacation. I love when I go to companies and there's somebody that tells me I'm the only one that could run this. I said, so I always say to that person, you know how many times I've heard that? You're the only one that could run this. By the end of the month, there'll be 2 other people. By the end of the year, every single person in this department will know how to run that same piece of equipment.
Absolutely.
And a chance to learn something new, and everybody will have an opportunity to grow in the company. And then you find out that person was the bottleneck. That person was causing lead time issues, quality issues. And that person now realizes he's not so valuable.
Yeah. And sometimes, Chris, when we look at that, we get caught up in the trivial many versus the vital few. And it's that big picture view that you have to look at your whole processes, because polyvalency or doing multiple jobs, if you want growth and development in your company, you have to have a succession plan in place to be able to do that, because some people don't want to stay where they're at. It's not like it was when I was growing up in the cotton mill. You did one job for all your life and that was it. People want growth and they want development. And the way to do that is to expand their skills, get the bench depth right, if you will, to use a baseball or basketball term. You have to be polyvalent and you need to compound. That's one of the biggest things that I push in my corporate training with folks is the law of compounding. You know, you can be an adder of value, you can be a subtractor of value, but when you become a multiplier of value, like you're doing with your company, where you can take off, that's when things get really good. So, man, I'm watching you like a hawk. If I'm going to be like anybody, it's going to be Christopher Guerrero, possibly that Carmine Donesco guy, because he's pretty handsome
Brian,
too.
coming from you, that's a huge, absolute, unbelievable compliment. So I personally thank you for that.
No, Chris, I'm the one that needs to thank you, because when I first reached out to you, we can connect on a lot of things, and each one of us has our strengths. And that's what I always tell people. You got to get people to play to their strengths. Quit focusing on their weaknesses. Tap into those strengths. You know, back in the 80s, there was, ping pong was one of the sports in the Olympics. We got the Olympics coming up, and the Chinese were just dominating over the U.S. And the U.S. coach had had enough. He went to the Chinese coach and he said, "What makes you so much better than us?" And he says, "Well, versus Western culture, we focus on a person's strengths versus their weakness, and we make them the best at what they do. So if somebody's got a good forehand, we make them the best in the world. If it's good backhand, we make them the best in the world at that." And that's a different shift in how you need to look at people, because not everybody has the same strengths. But just when you combine that into a polyvalent workforce where you've developed your people and they have those special skill sets, but as a whole, you grow and you become very powerful when you get all those resources aligned. So connection's important, clarity is important, focus is important, and you better have a good goal out there. The goal never changes. And, unless you've got some goals set and you're planning, executing, and measuring, you're never going to get to where you need to go. But this piece, Chris, that's one thing I love about you, man. You know how to tap into people's strengths, because if they just looked at you as an individual person, you're a pretty high powered guy. You've got the skill sets, you've got everything you need, but that's no good in a large organization if you can't spread that out among the organization. So, man, just hats off to you for what you're doing. That's why I'm a fan. I'm going to be like Chris Guerrero when I grow up.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate that. I do. I really do believe in people. And for me, I've had people move with me in companies from across the country and stayed in contact with people for 20, 30 years. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I'm a firm believer that I want to know who you are. I want to know your family, because that all fits into the bigger picture of growing somebody's ability and teaching and them wanting to learn. And I've had people now at BMW that have run 6 to 8 plants worldwide, and they call me once a year to thank me for some of the things that I
Mhm.
taught them back. I'm not kidding. Back when I was, 25 years ago, saying those
Yeah.
little things about people, it meant so much to these individuals that I can't believe something so simple goes such a long way. It just shows
Yeah.
gratitude to people, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, everybody wants to go to work and they want to show up and do a good job. The ones
Yeah.
that don't won't last. It's just a fact,
No,
right? But everybody
that's
wants
right.
to do a good job. They want to have the right tools. They want to be proud. They want to make sure that they tell everybody, I'm working at BMW. I built that car. So yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. It's a big deal to me.
So Chris, one of the things you just said was that word pride. And, if you circle back, you asked me about my story growing up. I grew up on the Mill Hill. My dad only had a fourth grade education, worked in the cotton mill for 40 years. And I watched him every day. And when I was not playing baseball, I was working in the cotton mill myself. And, it was just a horrible existence. But that was all he knew. And I made my mind up at a young age, I would never be that way. So when he retired, they convinced him to take a $10,000 lump sum payment. And that was all we had to live on other than Social Security for him. And that was it. We were poor and we just didn't realize how poor we were. But I said, I will never, ever be that way. And that's one thing I will say about Michelin. Francois Michelin, he tapped into a spot that was so important for me around that value of people and how you view them to help them grow and develop. I mean, Chris, I can't thank them enough for what they've done for me, man. I've just been able to enjoy so much. But one of the most rich and rewarding experiences I had was teaching engineers how to relate to people. And I taught this course called Leadership Through People Skills. I think they still teach it down at the Moore School of Business. And, it's about the four quadrants of behavior. And you can drive someone's behavior wherever you need it to go if you're a leader or a manager. And, Jim Hatchell and I had this conversation yesterday. He said, I was a my way or the highway kind of manager when I was in the Air Force. And then when I came out, and I said, I was too. They had to invent a new quadrant for me. But that quadrant of dominant warm behavior is a collaborative behavior. And that's what you're doing with your people, and you're helping them grow. So, if you want to farm, man, you got to water the plants. And if you want to have a good harvest, you got to keep it watered. You got to nurture it. You got to fertilize it. And people are no different. If you don't invest in people, you are going to struggle. And that's where I'm at right now, doing exactly what you're doing, Chris, is helping people simplify those things to get back to that piece where we tap into that resource. It drives me crazy that people are having to look for people to come to work now. How stupid is that?
Right. I know, it is crazy.
Yeah.
So Brian, if somebody wants to reach out to you, a corporation or individual, how do we get a hold of Brian?
Oh, that's great, Chris. Thank you so much. You can reach me, area code 803-622-7283, or you can contact me via email at brianpearson@rocketmail.com. And if you want to go to my website, it's www.johnmaxwellgroup.com/Brian Pearson. And that's with an I. And, that's the other piece I'd like to give a shout out to is having been in the Maxwell organization now and having been mentored by John and the faculty and being an executive director with them. I can't thank them enough for what they're doing for me and with me. It's just an incredible company, and man, it's all about leadership, and I have grown and developed as a result of being in that organization as well. But I'll tell you, you guys have added so much value to me today. It's ridiculous.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can tell anybody that comes and sees you, you're a straight up guy. You're one of the good guys, honest guys. I love talking to you because I can just relate to the things you talk about. So before we close, let's end it on the cars. Let's talk about all these car shows you're at.
I'm waiting to hear about.
I've got Porsches, BMWs. I sold them all when I came to Carolina. Cars are my. I absolutely love fast cars.
Okay, so let's talk cars a little bit. So one of my best buddies in the whole world, Keith Bogart, who owns Zero Gravity Media. Keith and those guys there are just killing it right now. I was shooting him a message on the way up here. He did the Charlie Reimer stuff for CBS Sports. He's done the Jeff Gordon Corvette giveaway. They're just a phenomenal media company. Keith's got more money than he knows what to do with. But Keith invited me, because we've worked together on some things he's trying to do to grow his company. But we became very, very good friends. And he's got this Mercedes GT. I think I told you this thing is like lime green. And it's like putting two buffaloes in a sardine can when I go ride with him. But the thing's got like 700 horsepower. But my background is this, growing up in Greenville, you had Greenville Pickens Speedway out there. We'd always go out there. I actually worked with a group called Gentry Brothers Racing. Always been around it. Managed a Daytona Dash team for a while, but I've always been around racetracks. And then my other friend, Steve Dibble, it was with Penske on the Pagano car for the Indy team with Penske. So, if it's got a motor in it and it's fast, I'm all for it. So it's all about the speed and all that stuff. And, love hanging out at car shows, but that's what it's about. So anyway, riding with Keith one day, he's got all these friends. They show up for this coffee and cars down in Columbia, and you pull up and there's just these fantastic cars that nobody normally sees. And we're meeting at this old movie theater, and here comes a guy in a Lamborghini. Then you got somebody showing up in a Nissan GTR, and you got Porsches all over the place. So anyway, being the fun-loving guy I am, because my little group, Lightning in a Bottle, that's a mixed-up group, man. We are just like all over the board, but it's about having fun and supporting people and getting the best out of them.
That's how I know I liked you, because I need to be in that group.
Well, you are, and I will tell you, man, we have fun in there. But the deal is this: that I was telling you about the Cannonball Run. Watching those movies and having been around cars my whole life, I just have a passion for it. But what I have more of a passion about is the connections with people. So when you can combine fast cars, really expensive high-end cars, and food, I'm in. I'm there. I'm there with it. So we're going to make this run to Mooresville to go to Lineburger's steakhouse up there on Lake Norman. So we're going to get all these exotic cars lined up. And my other friend, Dana Jacobs, I love her to death. She is in a Mini Cooper group. She teaches for the Phil Wicks Driving Academy, where they learn how to race Mini Coopers. Wow. So we were going to try to get them to tail behind all these exotic cars and go eat steaks. But it's about the relationships and the connections more than anything else. And man, what a great community it is. And I'm just grateful to Keith for bringing me into that, because it's a passion, man. It's connection with people, just like me and you and Carmine. I'm tickled to death to be talking to you guys. But yeah, Carmine, we're going to have to steal a car or something to get in with these cats, because they got some pretty high dollar stuff.
Yeah, I hear that, man.
Brian, it's been an honor to have you on the show. And there you have it, Carmine. Brian's living in the fast lane, not just in the executive side, but in the real world.
Yeah,
no doubt. Real world. There it is.
That's it, baby. Hey, man, thank y'all for having me on. This has just been a pleasure, and it's been a blast. And I like I said, I am a big fan of both of you guys, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime in the future. But thank you for doing everything you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate you.
We really
okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All you guys out there, thank you so much for listening in today. We will be back. Hey, Chris, is this our last show for this season? Or are we going to?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get Chris Trapper and a couple others, but right now we'll probably close it out. But if I can wrap up Chris off his concert tour, we'll get him on.
Yeah, that would be great. Either way. And if we do end up just closing out the season, we'll start up again in September, along with the other shows. But it's all been great. Chris, thanks so much for what's happened. We'll be following your exploits with Super Potty Trainer and Walmart products. We can't wait to see what's next. Brian, thank you so much for being on today. And for all you listeners out there, please go on out to Google Play or iTunes, wherever you consume your podcast content, and give us a listen, and to make sure you hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next time on Made in America. You all take care.